Right now, China just rips us. They've taken our money, our jobs, our manufacturing.
It's the greatest theft in the history of the world.
I just don't like the communists owning anything in my hometown.
China is in so many ways becoming what we sort of imagine ourselves to be. People go to China to get a glimpse of the future now when it comes to infrastructure and technology. And for us in the United States, that's threatening.
There are some people in this country who would like to make China an enemy.
It is the greatest opportunity lost that mankind has seen.
We're not yet enemies.
When we think about the one place that seems to be doing us better than we're doing us, it's them.
And they are the #2 economy in the world.
They're doing their own movies, they're setting up their own Hollywood system. They're embracing the American dream.
China is rapidly transforming with some 600 million consumers projected to come online in the next 5 to 10 years. Think about it. They will have a middle class that will be double the size of the entire United States.
They want cell phones, they want cars, they want everything we want. We convince them to drink our cocktail.
You've got these two countries that are in so many ways inextricably connected, and yet are also deeply, philosophically, morally suspicious of each other.
This is the exact wrong time to be picking a trade war with China.
And the question is, how do we get past that suspicion? How do we get to a point where we acknowledge all the things that we have in common? Because we're only going to be getting more integrated. And if we fail in that, then all of us suffer.
If we are to clash, it would be a disaster for the whole world.
Also, click on this TV here with Malcolm Clarke. We just saw a phenomenal documentary film, BetterAngels. It's all about the relationship between the U.S. and China, which I think now than ever in our political climate is a film that needs to be seen, right?
Yeah. Well, when we started it in 2013, so it's been a 5-year journey. And we knew the relationship was going off the rails 5 years ago. It certainly hasn't gotten any better. And in fact, with President Trump in the White House, it's much more a conversation which is being thought about and had by many, many people. So oddly enough, President Trump's policies have brought this film to more prominence than we could have possibly imagined. So. Yeah. We hope that we're going to have a little hand in forming the conversation.
Yes, I think President Trump needs to see this film, actually, right? Would you say so?
We would love it if we could. I don't think it would fall on friendly eyes and ears, yes. But I would love it if he could see it, yeah.
Okay. So you said you're not pro-China, you're not pro-American, you're pro-America and China getting along, and I love that. I love that sentiment. Yeah. But let's talk about some of the stories of the people focused as the BetterAngels. The story of the young man from Texas who was a young father and met a Chinese, his future wife in China, and just kind of adapted. How did you get his story as a part of this?
We spent a lot of time researching and searching for people from one country who were making a life and a living in the other country. So Americans who were working in China because they found opportunities there, or they found love there sometimes, relationships there. And the Chinese people who came over to America, we have one guy, he said, I was so anti-America. For 30 years, I always thought that America was the big, scary country. He finally relents and agrees to come to Iowa to visit some friends in Iowa, and a week later he says, I couldn't have been more wrong. Americans are wonderful. I have to tell all my friends, I want to devote the rest of my life to telling my friends in China not to be afraid of Americans, that they're good people. So, I mean, this may sound a little bit kind of Pollyanna-ish in a sense, very, But actually, fundamentally, these kind of stories, when people come and visit China now, they're blown away by it. It's an extraordinary place. It's not a scary place. It's just the Chinese have made a 40-year push to come into the 21st century, and they've done it marvelously. They're to be admired, not to be criticized. But the Chinese, if I may criticize them for a moment, don't tell that story very well. So we in the West tend to think of the Chinese as being predatorial, of stealing our jobs, stealing our IP.
Well, that's how Trump thinks, at least.
Well, listen, I don't have a lot of regard for President Trump, but he is right. The Chinese have done that, and it has been a stage in their development. When you are a developing country, you tend to steal ideas and borrow ideas wherever you can. But now the Chinese have something to protect because now they're inventing their own IP.
Yeah.
And so they're protecting it. And so it's a different stage of development. So, what's interesting is if you look back to 1900, who was the biggest IP thief on the planet? The United States of America.
You're going to have to tell me this one.
Yeah, it's the absolute truth. America, when it was a developing country, stole its IP from Europe.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's not a criticism. It's a stage in America's development, and the same thing is happening in China. I think what's happened now is that there's a lot of political rhetoric, but I think what our film tries to show is that there's a commonality of ambition and experience and a real similarity between the intrinsic nature of Americans and Chinese, who are hardworking, entrepreneurial, and they all want the same thing, which is a better life. And I think that's to be admired, both in Americans and in Chinese.
And another cool aspect of your film was they actually bring Chinese businesses to America. With that example of that woman in Alabama that worked in a Chinese factory based in America.
What's very interesting, and I think the Chinese are kind of replacing America as being the great global risk takers. Yeah. Americans used to take risks. They used to start businesses, hope that they'd succeed. If they failed, they'd try again and try again. That's what the Chinese do now. And it's a Chinese business coming to Alabama to take an opportunity that was waiting there. No Americans did that. It required a Chinese business to do it. And I think Americans, this is not a criticism of Americans, but I think Americans could learn something. That, perhaps they're losing a little bit of that American spirit that has become part of folklore. People all over the world think Americans are the great capitalist warriors, the people who build the country, build businesses, take risks, innovate, have new ideas. That's not as much true, perhaps, as it was even 20 years ago. And I think, the Chinese are kind of jumping into that vacuum, and I think Americans could learn something from that.
All right. But what about America's influence on China? Let's talk about Hollywood and how you featured Transformers, the movie where 4 actors, Chinese actors, got the chance of a lifetime to be featured on film. So it definitely works in the other way, where the Chinese is embracing American cinema. And as you know, China box office is huge, yes. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think, one of the things that Americans have to know, and I think it's a good thing for Americans to know, Chinese really admire them, and they really revere them, and you can say that they steal intellectual property. Imitation is the greatest
form of flattery.
I think so. And Chinese films now look, they're not as good as American films, but they make kind of American films that don't quite work because they're in Chinese, and they are copying, but in a very, very kind of respectful way. They're copying what Americans do best. And in China, everyone would like to be a movie star. There's a celebrity system which is just as kind of vital and as highly paid and as highly publicized as in Europe and in America. And I think, as someone in the film said, we should welcome them to the community of nations because they want everything that we want. and we shouldn't criticize them for that.
So you're a 2-time Oscar winner, which I think is amazing for your documentary on one of the last Holocaust survivors,
yes.
and also a young boy that was dealing with cancer. How does this film fare as far as Oscar contention?
I think being brutally realistic, I think a film like this has almost no opportunity at the Academy Awards. The Academy Awards are a different kind of competition. This film we will probably enter in European contests. Okay. Sadly, I would love nothing more than to win a third Academy Award. Yes. But because they are
that'd be amazing.
They are addictive. But realistically, I think this is this would be seen, especially in this kind of very anti-Chinese climate in America right now, where there's a lot of rhetoric that's been whipped up against China.
Yeah.
And candidly, you know, the sad thing is that if this present kind of climate, if you are not making an anti-China film, you are seen to be pro-China. There's no middle ground.
Right.
So I think this film is likely to be criticized. I think, you know, I don't mind. I expect it. But this is not a pro-China film. And it's not a pro-America film, but it is a pro-America and China getting along film.
So where can we see this film? I know that you're going to have a limited theatrical release.
It will open in the States in the beginning of April.
Nice.
In major cities. I don't imagine it's going to turn into a date movie for a rainy Saturday night. But I do hope that we can, you know, in all the big cities and on many university campuses also.
Wow.
And then we'll do a simultaneous release in China. So it will be playing in both countries at the same time.
Wow, fantastic. Malcolm Clarke, guys, Oscar-winning documentary film director. Amazing piece of film that we just saw in BetterAngels. Definitely have to check it out. President Trump, I think he needs to check this one out as well. How yes, the U.S. and China can just get along and not be at war.
That's great.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Malcolm. More to come here. Click on this.